What's the most expensive car that you've sold? And what's your favourite car that you don't own?
Probably the most expensive car we've sold. We've sold a few rollers at 700,000 and 800,000. And the favourite car drives probably a Porsche, Porsche 992. But again,
Nick Theodossi,
owner of Australia's #1 luxury car dealership, has over 50 years of experience trading luxury cars.
So I was always trying to grow the business. I always had this thing, it'll work itself out. And if it didn't, well, then I'd have to go to plan B, which I never had one. So a lot of mentorship come from my father. He was the hardest work I've ever seen in my life. He retired at 55 and he says to me, because I'm 73, you should retire. And I always say one thing, you made me this way. I just didn't want to be that boy that was going to end up in a 3-bedroom brick veneer house in Coburg for the rest of my life. I wanted something better for myself because
If you're interested in growing wealth through townhouse development, check out the Little Fish Network. You get coaching, expert access, and community support. It's essentially everything you need to win at property and development. Welcome back to Australia's #1 podcast. We are Little Fish. We speak to the big fish about town each and every week. Please, guys, this year for every subscribe, follow, or review in 2024, we're donating $1 to our charity EB, Epidermolysis bullosa. It's a rare skin condition in kids. It's the worst disease you've never heard of, so please give. And Benny, if they want to go to the littlefishpodcast.com.
They can make a bigger splash for sure.
A bigger splash. Thanks, guys.
And everyone that's been getting over there and getting involved, we really do appreciate it. And I know all the kids in EB do as well.
Yeah, love it. So let's get into the guests quickly. We've got our good friend up the freeway today, Bryce Holdaway. Host of the Property Couch, the second most popular podcast.
You talked him into it again,
Australia.
PK.
We get him up from time to time, mate, away from the crashing waves and the sprawling beaches. But good to have you on, Bryce.
Thanks for having me, boys.
Love it. Nick, thanks so much for coming on.
thank you. Thanks for having me.
I believe this is the first podcast you've ever been on.
Correct, yeah, it is.
Let's go.
Yeah, well done, mate.
I'm excited.
We're rapt to have you on board. When I would drive home to Williamstown, I lived in Williamstown for a bit, always went past down Arden Street there and always read the everyone should own a prestige car once in their life. And I'm working on it, okay?
Well, don't leave it too long.
Okay, maybe you can hook me up. Nick, mate, you're doing the research, the career you've had is an outstanding one, and as we've spoken about, there's been ups and downs and that sort of thing. Can you take us back to your parents moved over here. You were born in Australia, I believe, a year after they come across. You lived in Coburg, the mean streets of Coburg back then. What was it like growing up, mate, in Coburg?
Look, I've got to tell you, it was probably the best part of my life and probably the greatest memories. My parents from Cyprus, they come out in 49. My father immigrated in 49. Mum came out in 50. And I was born in 51. Mum brought me home in a suitcase, believe it or not, from the Royal Women's Hospital and a tram, but that's the way it was. Naturally, the case was open. But and we resided at the Avenue East Coburg till I got married for 19 years. And got married at 19. It was a tough. I was very lucky. I was brought up in a street called the Avenue. There was 36 kids in the street. It was only a short street, but I was the only wog, or whatever you want to call me at those dagos or whatever at the time. But I blended in beautifully with them because they embraced me, and these guys, they're the nearest thing to my heart ever. And girls, we used to run our own plays in the street. We'd run our own firebomb nights and cracker nights and billy carts, and we played football and cricket till the lights went out every night or till someone was called in. One thing about our street was that if the street smelt every night because that was my mother's cooking. And everybody's saying the Theodossis. Well, actually, our names in Coburg were the Hardys because when my parents first come to the Avenue, someone said, "What's your name?" And my dad, in his broken English, would have said Theodossi. And the lady up the road, Mrs. McMillan, someone asked her, "What's their names?" He said, "It's too hard to say, so we'll call them the Hardys." And till the day I left, when I was 19, I was still called Mr. and Mrs. Hardy, and I was called Nick Hardy. So that was something it's come to my mind just now by speaking about it, and so it gives you an idea how I embraced those years living in Coburg and playing football and cricket with some of the best blokes I'd ever played with, and they were all older than me, but I just loved it, and that's where I embraced probably having a bit of a sporting background. I enjoyed the boys and the girls in the street. We had a great time. Very memorable.
Was there a sense that that your family, when they call you the Hardys instead of your own name, was there a sense that you were different, or because you grew up and that was the norm for you? It would have been more prevalent for your parents to be called the Hardys than you, really, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it was. I was called Nico. I was never called Nick till I changed my name from Nico to Nick when I got married. So everybody called me Nico. And all I wanted to do was be an Australian. I didn't really want to be a Greek anymore. I decided I wanted to be Australian. I wanted to take Vegemite sandwiches to school, and I wanted to play football and cricket with the white boys. And I'm not racist. I've never been racist, but playing, I went to school with Robert Walls, and Wallsy and I used to kick the ball end to end every night after school, and so I had this affiliation that all I wanted to do was be an Australian. I wanted to eat, as I said, I wanted to eat Vegemite sandwiches. I wanted to drink lemonade.
Barrack for Collingwood. And that was my whole life, So, yes, and I was fortunate. I went to East Coburg Primary School, which we walked to every day, and later on after that, I went on to Coburg Tech and left in year 9, which I was 14 years and 10 months old when I left school, because not that I'd never liked school, I loved school, but what I didn't like, all my friends were leaving. And I thought, if they're going, well, I might as well go, So that was probably one of my biggest mistakes. Had I looked back now, that I wish I had stayed on a little bit longer. Yes, so...
Which part of that? Because clearly there's a massive success story for you as a businessman. But back then, what would have been the benefit for you staying a bit longer in your mind as you tell that story?
Look, I loved technical drawing and architecture and woodwork and so forth, because the tech school. So I could see myself doing. I always wanted to do better in what I was doing. I remember in year 8, second form, that if you got 50, I think it was 50, a certain percentage, I think it was 50%, but it was the first 60 kids got the highest percentage, got a scholarship. And I remember this distinctly, and I worked my guts out. I really did. And I come in at 63rd, so I missed out. Then the next subject was religious instruction, RE, and Mr. Hibbert, I'll never forget his name, great bloke, local parisher and that. And I got in their class and I was howling my eyes out. I was that disappointed, But when I went home and told my mum and dad of this story, it was like water off a duck's back, because they were only focused on survival. They weren't focused on... my son could have got a scholarship, but he never got one. But who really cares? He's going to work next year. That's the way it was. In those years, I was... I had a job since I was 10. I always worked in a hamburger shop, or I worked at service stations, just to have a little bit of extra money. Not that you get paid a lot of money in those days, but I worked right into... I was about 13, 14, then I got a full-time job, but when I left school. But I'd always had something to do. If I wasn't playing sport, I'd have a job somewhere, washing dishes. I was innovative. I used to walk around with this little wooden box, and in it I'd have a tin of cutting compound, a rag, and some polish. And I'd go around, and I'll never forget the local bootmaker up the road. I forget his name. I said, he had a Morris Major. I said, I can make, and I was probably about 12. I said, I can make your car look brand new, you know, for about, say it was $1. It mightn't have been that much, might have been 20 cents. So I must have been older than 12 because I drove it from Nicholson Street. I drove the car down to my mum and dad's place, detailed it. I had some tyre black too in those days, used to paint the tyres black. And then I drove it back to him, and I think he gave me what I asked for, 20 cents or 2 shillings or 3. I can't remember what the amount of money was, but so I was always innovative, trying to find a way to get a quid, and how can I open my own business one day? Or
So that was a conscious thought as a youngster all those years ago to start your own business?
Yeah.
Because that was probably a little bit, it's pretty common, like we all know, like entrepreneurship and it's a common, and MBAs and stuff like that. That's all pretty common practice these days. Back then, you would have been sort of had to find your own way. Would that be right? There wasn't as many people look up to, or the information wasn't there to sort of show you the way?
Well, definitely. I mean, I looked up to everybody that was doing well. And there was a gentleman who lived in our street, Stan Ryan, and he was a car and boat dealer. I didn't thoroughly understand that side, but I understood the fact that he always had a speedboat and he had a flashy car. So I always thought to myself, I want one of those one day. So, and the kids in the street got to go to the movies and so forth with their parents. Well, we had none of that. So we'd sit home and it's a bit like Sunday morning mass. All the Catholics in the street went to mass, so there was no one to play with for 4 hours till they got back, you know. So I had to sweat it out till they got back, or I had to go and do the gardening with my dad because we grew our own food, our own vegetables. So, yeah, if it wasn't helping my dad, I was out playing. If I wasn't playing, I was working. So I was, I was a rotation. But I always looked at people, what they had, and I thought, I want one of those. I want to be that. It's like, I'll never forget, we never had chocolate.
And you never thought to yourself, you always believed that you could get it. I think that's the disconnect with some people or what you were able to do, Nick, was not only identify that they've got it and that you want it, but somehow you had some kind of deep-seated belief that you could get it as well. Because I would imagine most kids that, Nico from Cyprus sort of, where that confidence comes from, because I guess society's telling you Nico from Cyprus isn't meant to get that shit, you know what I mean? So, where do you think that came from, that drive and belief to go after it, I suppose?
Well, believe it or not, I was actually quite a shy kid, but I had enough to ask. I had enough courage to ask somebody about something. But the drive it come within me. I mean, I just didn't want to be that boy that was going to end up in a 3-bedroom brick veneer house in Coburg for the rest of my life, married with 4 kids. I wanted something better for myself because your belief comes within. It doesn't. You don't read books about belief. No one can come and tell you and pat you on the back and say, look.
So you just had that inner belief that you just naturally gravitated towards what you believed, or what you wanted to achieve.
Yeah, I wanted to be respected, and I felt that my credibility was probably something that came later in my life, but I wanted to respect people and get respected back. And when you're growing up the way we grew up, you didn't get that. You had to earn it. So we went out to earn it.
So Nick, just quickly, so seeing your parents, I guess, sort of work really hard, have times where they struggled for money, all those sort of things, how big an impact do you think that had on you to be sort of say, hey, I want to maybe break the mold here a bit. I don't want to have those stresses. I want to do more.
It was a great impact because missing out and seeing everybody else getting what they those parents were able to do. But again, in those days there was a European mentality and Australian mentality. There were two different mentalities. Most of the Europeans that come out here in the late 40s and 50s, they were people from villages. They weren't from big cities, so they weren't wired that way to come to Australia and say, right, we've got to speculate to accumulate or whatever. They still felt they were in the villages and they had to save every bit of money, and paying the mortgage off was more important than anything else. You know, it was, it's hard to, it's not hard to explain, but what the most crucial thing was family was important, but nowhere near as important as survival.
Yeah, because you've come to a land for opportunity. This is your parents. English is typically second language,
Yep.
and so you said survival mode before, but it's really about, okay, we're trying to establish ourselves in something where it doesn't feel familiar. So it kind of makes sense that my sister married an Italian family over in Perth as well. So you understand that in order to feel that safety and security, it comes from ownership of the land and the property and paying it off as quickly as you can, and then everyone sort of gets together as a culture and a community to help that as well. So did you talked about the spark for entrepreneurship before, but was there ever the teachings that your parents gave you was more about, okay, buying your house, paying it off as quickly as you can? Because where was the mentorship or the modelling that you were seeing of people that were starting their own business?
Well, if you go back to a lot of mentorship come from my father. He's still alive. He's 98. He was the hardest worker.
Shout out your dad. What a legend. 98.
Nearly going to get his letter, isn't he?
He's just about.
Yeah.
I'll tell
How's
you.
he going? Is he going
He's
all right?
going well. Yeah,
Oh,
he's
that's
going
amazing.
well. He's got an amazing memory. But he was the hardest worker I've ever seen in my life, and I mean that. I've never met a. He says to me, he retired at 55, and he says to me, because I'm 73, you should retire. So I always say one thing: you made me this way.
Yeah.
So I wasn't planning on working at 73. I was certainly planning on retiring at 50. But the mentoringship was what I saw my parents do: pay their house off, save their money. That was what was installed in us. It wasn't to go out and waste money on going to the football on a Saturday and having a pie. You should stay home and help me, type of thing. That's, so you get a bit of, you go the other way when they do that to you, when they sort of hammer you a bit at home and say, well, you got to stay home, you can't do this, you can't do that, because you got to save your money.
Yeah, it fuels the desire, doesn't it? You talked about retirement then. I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because it's it's almost like a middle class term where people want to retire because they want to leave something that they don't enjoy doing. But my guess for you is that business and entrepreneurship is a bit of a sport for you.
Yeah.
So therefore, the concept of retiring means that, well, why would I stop doing what I'm enjoying? Because I'm still enjoying it.
Yeah, well, I've got two sayings about retirement. People ask me, I probably get that asked nearly every second day. I say, are you retired? I say, well, what would I retire for? That's for old people. It's not for me. And then the other thing is, and I read it, Clint Eastwood said the same thing at 93. Don't let the old man in.
Huh.
Yeah, of course.
You don't need to. You get up in the morning and you're training every day, so you're doing your healthy stuff. You're looking after your body, you're looking after your health. If you keep doing that, you can do it forever. Movement's everything. You retire. I have blokes come in and see me I went to school with, and I don't even recognise them the same age,
Yeah, and I sort of agree that my dad passed away recently, and I got to see him sort of retire and him go on that journey, obviously, to the end. And I reckon, I think I've seen a few other of my parents' friends as well, and I have to agree. I feel like the day that you stop, it's almost like an immediate sort of, you start to walk slower, lift lighter. You know what I mean? Just all those little things, and it just compounds, and before you know it, you're gone.
I got no doubt. I think you talk yourself into old age.
Yeah, 100%.
You know.
Because you don't. There's no question. 'Cause my dad was not much older than you. To be fair, he was 5, almost 6 years older than you.
Yeah.
And the stark difference in those 6 years, it's unbelievable. It's fucking mind blowing. So, and that's because you're keep getting up, going to work, you're doing the exercise, and you're not letting the old man in. So I think that's a good lesson for everyone at home. And what you said, Bryce, which is even more important, is, you know, and that's what we try and sell here, is that it's never too late, because why stop? You know, like why work towards a day where you have to stop something that you never liked doing in the first place? Why not take a step back and find something that you like doing and just do that forever?
Yeah.
You know, because we talk about here, because money, you can't take that shit with you, and it really does not matter. So, you know, if you can get up in the morning and do something that you love and continue to do that late into life, then I feel like that's how you win.
Well, I think we're blessed, you know. We're blessed, what Bryce said, you know, you find what you love doing and it becomes easy. When you don't like what you're doing, it's hard. It's like people being in business for...
And you need the light at the end of the tunnel, right? You need that retirement, whether it's 10, 20, 30, 40 years away. Yeah. Even as an apprentice, I was an apprentice, and I was thinking about a retirement when I was an apprentice. Make no mistakes, because you need that light to keep you, you know, motivated to keep doing the rat race sort of thing.
But, you know, and the other thing about retirement is, okay, I love golf, love playing golf. I don't want to drive a caravan around Australia. It's got no interest. I'd rather get plane to have a holiday and come back, you know, then. But I think it gives you, if you call it semi-retirement, or you've got that flexibility, which you don't have in your early years because you're really motivated to your business. Whereas as you get older, like myself now, I can go away for a week or 2 weeks or do something and don't feel guilty about it. Prior, if you go back 20 years ago, I'd feel guilty taking a holiday. But I think that's the bonuses of life you get later on.
Buy some freedom.
Yeah, you do. And because you feel comfortable in your own skin, you feel comfortable in your business. It's not about what the business makes in profit, it's maintaining your levels. And you go on to saying, this is great, I'm going to have 2 weeks off here, I'm going to go skiing, or I'm going to go do this or do that. And to me, that opportunity is just wonderful. It's just amazing to have that freedom.
Nick, and amazing lessons in that. And I think, when you get on the phone to you, Nick, you're in and off the phone call, because I feel like you want to get on another phone call to sell a car. So, you can sort of feel that energy, mate. So,
Are we done here, Pete?
loving all that stuff, Nick. Can you take us to where was the first business? Because obviously everyone, Melbourne's, most
prestigious
car dealer in Melbourne for decades.
It's an institution, to be fair.
It's an institution in a market that I think has probably evolved and changed over time. The internet would have changed it, all these sorts of stuff. But for that, to have that longevity, I think
still there, correct.
In anything you do is quite amazing. But where did the business first start? It wouldn't have been beers and Skittles the whole way through. Where did it start for Nick Theodossi in business?
My first car yard was in. Well, I'll go back a step. What I did, I left my apprenticeship, finished my motor mechanic apprenticeship, wanted to be a car salesman, and the reason was my wife's brother, which has just since passed. He was a car dealer. And I remember, because there was 10 years between Carol and Ron, and I said, what's your brother do? Because he wasn't living at home. He said, he's a car salesman. I said, how did he start? And this is where it started. And he said, he sell cars from home. So the brain started ticking. Yeah. I'm thinking, if he can do it, I can do it. So in those days, then I finished my apprenticeship. Then I went on to trying to get a job as a salesman, because that's all I wanted to be. So in those days, I went to Kevin Dennis and Cole Page, and they all knocked me back one after another. You got no experience. I went down a mob down in Bulleen. They said start Monday. When I got there, said we've changed their mind, sent me away. So I ended up getting a job at a place called Herschel Motors in High Street, Preston, which was great because that was my hood, like that's where I grew up and I knew everybody in Coburg and Preston. So I was comfortable in it, So I worked there for 6 months and become salesman of the month. After about a month, next 5 months I got it every month, and I thought if I'm not going to do it for this bloke, I'm going to go and do it for myself. So I went and rented a car yard in Coburg off this old bloke, empty yard, and I said to him, how much is that a week? He said it'd be $40 a week, the rent. So I had $1,500 in the bank. He wanted a rent month advance, which was $173.33 for a month rent, because calendar month. Anyway, so that's all right. So I got a mate of mine, said, get up there and write cars by Nicole up there. He wanted 200. So I gave him 200. Now I'm down to 1,100. I go and connect the electricity. That was $68. So I'm down in $1,000. And I've got to buy cars. I've got no cars yet. So something else I had to do. I forget anyway. But so I ended up with about $500. That was all I had left. So I went out and I bought an FB, an FC and a Mark II Zephyr. Now those cars I paid roughly about $50 each for them, because that's what cars were worth in those days. So I put them in the Herald Sun, and in those days you could book an ad in the paper and they'd send you an account. You didn't have to. There was no credit card to pay up front.
Helps with cash flow.
Yeah, there was no cash flow. So anyway, I put them in the paper at $199 each and sold the 3 the first day.
Wow.
And I thought, how good's this? I thought I've turned $150 into 600. I had 300 left in the bank. I'm back to 9. So off I go to the auctions. I buy 3 or 4 cars. Got to close the business up for the day, put the chains back up. No cars there. Bought back 6, put them in them, sold them. I ended up selling from 3 cars. I sold 36 cars my first month.
Wow.
Anyway, and I had a couple of grand in the bank and bought myself an old Mercedes to drive.
Was that unusual? Was 36 like out of the box, or was that standard for the time?
No, that was probably out of the box and the enthusiasm, because the following month I sold 5.
Yeah.
Back to earth, Nick.
Too busy cruising
was.
around.
Yeah, in
the
his
new
Mercedes.
down Chapel Street.
So the Mercedes was an old 190, which are worth nothing in those days, but I thought I wanted to show off,
How good am
show
I?
them I'm going okay. But and I remember saying to a friend of ours, he had a car yard up in Preston, I said, I think I'll get out of this business. I could see myself going broke. I may as well get me money and go back and work for Herschel's. He said, well, you've had 1 bad month out of 2. He said, you kidding, get back on the horse. So he inspired me, got back on the horse, and the rest is...
Do you remember what the difference was between those 2 months?
Yeah.
Was it, because that's a big difference.
Well...
Was it you got lucky, timing in
yeah,
the first month,
look,
a
I
bit
think
of that?
it was a bit of luck, a bit of enthusiasm. I'd never lost my enthusiasm, but I probably thought, oh, it's going to be easy. This is going to be easy. And then I started buying different cars. I went from $50 cars to $120 cars. So I was appealing to a different market.
As your first step towards prestige cars.
Oh, well, FC Holdens and FBs. And
But third month, did you go back to?
yeah, went back to around about 25, 30, and then we continued on, and then that sort of stayed there like that for about a year. Then in a year's time, I moved to 527 High Street, Preston. Next to, you guys probably don't know the area, but next to George's Car Wash, which is a pretty popular area up there. Put on a salesman, put on a cleaner. I thought, how good's this? I'm smoking the cherry here. So anyway, so we'd, and in those days we'd sell, we'd do our 30 cars a month, and we're selling $200 cars, so that was okay. And They were 2.99s or three. Everything was 99 at the end. And if we got a good profit, we nearly close up and go to the council club for the afternoon, hotel, and have a couple of beers. But it was fun.
Yeah.
There was no roadworthies. There was no warranties. It was come and collect your car.
Did you make the most of the no roadworthies? Would you
I would say we all did. But I'm not going to leave others out of this. But we had so much fun because, you'd say to people, look, you better bring a battery with you because I think this car's battery's not going to last or and
We'll push start you.
and
Don't worry, we'll start the second time.
and I've got to go back to a story which I really want to tell you this because it's a very funny story. But when I worked for Herschel Motors and I sold the second car was a Ford Cortina, and this gentleman came in on a motorbike and he had a helmet on, and he said, "I've come to see the Cortina," and I said, "No worries, I'll grab the keys." So I went inside, grabbed the keys, come out, and went to start and had a flat battery. He's still got his helmet on. He puts his head down to the bonnet. I'll never forget this. And he said, "Geez, it runs quiet. I'll take it." I've still got the keys. I'm looking for a jumper lead.
Come and pick it up the
And I've sold
Savi.
him the car. So that was the sort of thing you had a lot of the fun in those days. But that happened all the time. It wasn't something new. And then, we stayed in 527 High Street, Preston for about 3 years. And then I moved to Fawkner, and I had an acre there because I thought I always
Sort of
wanted
like
to get
Sydney Road type
Sydney
stuff.
Road,
Yep.
Fawkner. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
an old beef ranch,
Oh, yeah.
and they were a bit like McDonald's and that in those days, and they only lasted a few years in Melbourne, but they built a beautiful building with asphalt all around it. And I thought I could make a car yard out of this, so it was $916 rent a month. It was an acre, so I thought I'll call it the car ranch. So off we went. And then 5 salesmen, 2 bookkeepers, and off we went. But those days,
Same cleaner?
same cleaner. But what had happened was things had changed. Kevin Dennis was advertising on television. Advertising was you were selling payments, you weren't selling cars. So if someone could see a car and a photo of a Falcon and he'd say, "Look, I can have that for $23 a week." And that's how they bought cars in those days. Then people would apply for finance on the phone. And it was an easier system. That's probably why they had more repossessions in those days because
Couldn't afford
No
it.
one could afford them.
no one could afford them. So
Because the car business is more a finance business than a car business, isn't it? Because if you don't make as much on the difference between what you got it and what you sell it for, it's the recurring that comes from the finance, right?
yeah, well you get there's money to be made out of finance. It used to have a trail. It doesn't have a trail anymore. They just pay you a commission of. But again, that's not today. That was yesterday. Today's a different thing. It's all outside and it's done by banks and it's not as if it's a money making machine. Finance, big dealerships like new car dealerships would be, but our used car dealership would only make a small significant amount of money out of finance, and there's no trails, doesn't go on forever.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about risk appetite? Like, you had $1,500 in the bank. It's slowly dwindling down, and then you go, "Oh, I'm going to go to Fawkner," and you rattle these numbers off as if they were yesterday, $916 a month. But I think what separates an entrepreneur from someone who just dreams about being entrepreneurial or a wantrepreneur is just that risk appetite. Where did you develop that tolerance for risk? Because that seems to be, in this early part of your story, your ability to to take on risk and back yourself is part of your success story.
Yeah, look, I've always taken on risk. I haven't been afraid of it. But when we moved to Faulkner, they did a floor plan in those days, and you could go to Custom Credit and say, look, I want to get some floor plan, and they check you out, and they'd advance you $50,000 in those days. That's what I had. And what it was done was offset by the finance. So if you wrote a contract for a car and the finance was, the car was 1,000, the interest was 1,000, after 4 years the total repayments might have been 7,000. Well, that 7,000 was offset off your 50,000. And once you got to your 50,000 offset with your floor plan, then they would pay you a commission over that. So your floor plan cost you nothing, but they would advance you the money. So, and then they would come along Custom Credit once every 3 or 4 weeks and do a check. So every car you bailed, you'd own the majority of stock and 50% you wouldn't own, so they bail it, make sure the car was there, and it was, that's the way it was. It was I don't know if they do floor plans anymore or anything like that, but getting back to the risk, that's where I took that risk of taking the 50 to see if I could buy better cars and go get better again, so I was always trying to grow the business, and I always had this thing, it'll work itself out. Mm-hmm. And if it didn't, well, then I'd have to go to plan B, which I never had one. So
I was going to say, Nick, at any point sort of along this journey, were there times where you thought, obviously that second month, you nearly threw in the towel, but you got that bit of inspiration, from a friend, from a mentor. Has there been a time, times where you've thought, things are getting a bit much, maybe debt's heavy,
GFC,
times are tough?
Well, it wasn't GFC, it was my appetite for risk probably brought my downfall. So that was 70, 72, 73, 74, 5 and 6. I decided to go in to prestige cars. That was my first touching. After 12 months of that, and say 75.
Was that through the ranch?
No, I'd sold the ranch and I moved into another place down the road, and I called it Wells Court Prestige. And then I bought a property in Brunswick, which used to be Brent's Motors, and they were the prestige dealer in the 60s and 70s. So I actually bought the property off a guy called Brian Sleeman, and I said to him, he was a Ford dealer, and I said, the property was 200,000, and I gave him 100,000 deposit in those days, and he charged me 18% interest, which I thought that was okay because I was going to sell 1 million cars and make plenty of money. Anyway, that's when it turned to shit, and I over-risked myself. I took a punt that I couldn't sustain. My floor plan was now with another finance company, AGC at the time. That was up to 250,000. And if you couldn't pay out the cars you sold, and I got into a bit of trouble there, and my back was right to the wall, and I thought, I'm gone this time. I really thought I was gone. Anyway, I was gone. So, following on from that, that didn't turn out as good. I had to close the business. They foreclosed on me, to be perfectly honest, and kept my house. Had to start all over again. So I thought, well, the only way I can do this, I was dealing a lot of prestige cars out of Sydney, and I was liked up there as well, but the problem was in Melbourne in those days, and the car business was, if you went arse up, or you bounced a cheque or anything like that, it was the biggest no-no in the world, and they wouldn't let you back on. They wouldn't let you on for any money. And today, they do it every day, and people just think it's just a normal, you know. But with me, I went to Sydney, so we just had our baby Dion. He's now 46. So Carol and I packed up
1978.
78, 79 it was. 79.
So Nick, how old were you when you did go?
26.
26. So
Wow.
that would have been a bit to swallow at that time. You would have had to have sort of a few hard lessons.
Yeah, look, luckily enough, like, I was strong on the outside, but I was piss weak on the inside, to be perfectly honest. I was distraught. You know, they auctioned all my cars at, Bill Jane did it at Southern Auctions in the city, or Trade Auto Auctions. I had to go in the room, I was bawling my eyes out. You know, just couldn't believe what's happened to me. I had this great business, and I just pushed the barrow too hard and wanted to get bigger and bigger and bigger and be the king of cars, you know. So anyway, I went to Sydney, worked for a guy up there, Sports Car World. He promised me the world, and he wouldn't. Anyway, he didn't pay me.
Oh.
You know, so he owed me something like, after a year, 70 or 80 grand, and he dribbled me $1,000. I had to pay the rent in a place in Strathfield. My back was to the walls, working 7 days a week. Anyway, when I asked him for the money, I think I got 30 grand out of him at the time, and it mightn't have been that much, but he sacked me. I said, "You've done me the greatest favour in the world."
Yeah.
And I went and worked for John Thompson, a guy exactly opposite, sold sports cars. And I worked for John for 2 years. He was the best thing that happened to me. He was a great mentor. There's a guy that was a general manager, John Phillips. We become super friends, and a great team of blokes I work with. And for 2 years, I was the best salesman. I topped the sales every month for 2 years, never missed a month. So I would make, out of 5 or 6 salesmen, I would make 60% of the gross profit a month, and the other blokes made up the balance between them.
What is that? Like, is it superior sales technique? You talked about your enthusiasm and your drive, but there's got
Work ethic,
you got to know how to sell as well.
Yeah, look, work ethic was number one, because they would have their RDOs every week. I worked 7 days, because Sydney was 7 days trading.
Yeah.
I introduced I said to John Thompson one day, I said, "Can I keep it open to 8 o'clock or 7 o'clock at nights, 10 o'clock Friday nights?" He'd go for your life. So I needed the money.
Yeah.
I needed the money. I was in debt for 60 grand when I left Melbourne. So every Friday I got paid. I'd send someone a cheque for $50, $70, $80, paid back the 60. And 2 years long after working with John, what happened was I went to John and I said, "John, I'm going back to Melbourne to live. I've got another baby on the way." And he said to me, "No worries." Anyway, next day he didn't come in. The general manager came in and said, "Tom, I want you out of the place today. He doesn't want any ghosts in the closet." So I'll never forget those words, because the ghost in the closet was that for 2 years I did everything right by him.
Yeah.
He thought if I was leaving in 2 months I might do something wrong by him.
Yeah.
So that's okay. So that was a kick in the guts, and I waited all day. I said to Johnny Phillips, I said, "Mate, I'm not going anywhere. I want to see Tomo, because I think he owe me more than that, you know." Yeah. Wasn't the money, he was great, pay her everything. So anyway, he didn't come in, so I went home broken hearted. Anyway, they lent me a car, because I didn't have a car. So I went home to Strathfield from Burwood. Anyway, I went and saw Ronnie Phillips. He was another big prestige bloke and well respected in Parramatta Road. And they called him RC Phillips. I said, "RC," I said, "got a job." He interviewed me. He said, "Yep, start Monday." Got there Monday morning. He said, "Mate, I can't employ you." I said, "Why?" I said, "I'll be here for 2 months." I said, "And if I like it, I'll stay longer." You know.
You got a phone call.
So I didn't get a phone call. I went there.
Yeah, but did the previous
Yeah,
employer...
he got a phone call from Tomo and said, "Don't employ him."
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, well, I've got 2 months because I had that left on my lease in the house. I thought, and I had 13 grand in the bank. I paid everybody back. I had 13 grand in the bank. So I turned around and I said to Carol, I'm going to buy cars out of the Sydney Morning Herald because that's all I used to do for Tomo in the morning. So when I worked for Tomo, my day started at 4 in the morning. Sometimes at midnight I'd go to Central, get the Sydney Morning Herald and start ringing people out of the paper. That's what I used to do in Melbourne from midnight. I'd start doing it. And anyway, so I started buying cars. And then they'd ring me and say, did you buy that car? I say, yeah, I've got it at home. Right? They say, okay, how much we got to pay you on top? And I say, I want $1,500 or $1,000 on top. So by the time I left Sydney, I had about 40 odd grand in the bank.
So you become that intermediary
Yeah,
broker.
I was buying them
Working for yourself.
and wholesaling.
Yeah,
And back on his way to becoming the king of cars.
Yeah. So, but I was very careful. So anyway, I come back to Melbourne with 40 grand and we still had a house in Greensborough. So tenants went, so we moved back into their baby, another one on the way, and then I started wholesaling again, and that's what I started, just buying the paper and doing that, and no one would give me a chance. Every time I bought a car off a dealer, I had to go they wanted a bank check. They wouldn't take my checks. So I had to go to the bank, get a bank check. It's pretty humiliating. So a lot of this humiliation is what drove me to the next part of my life, because I'd lost all my credibility and respectability and what I did have. So that goes for the next 40 years after that. That's what I've worked on full time. My credibility and respectability. So when I got back to Melbourne, I started wholesaling, and I did that for probably 10 years. Just one out. Yeah. Got, bought a new house and plenty, and kids grew up, had 4 kids, they all went to private schools. So everything was going all right, but on a scale. It was only what I could afford, but I still get up every morning, put my long pants on and off I go, back to work.
So how important, I guess, like you're saying, those lessons around it's like you say, that humiliation piece, all that sort of stuff. You obviously just didn't want that to happen again, and you said from an early age that you realised that I want to get respected, I want to give respect, I want to get respect.
I want
back.
to become the king of cars, and at 26, you were nearly there and lost it all.
Yeah, yep.
And then go up to Sydney, 60 in the hole, get sacked, come back, and then come full circle again to actually become the king of prestige cars, which is but it's crazy for the people at home to listen to hear what you needed to go through, because it's easy for us or for Pete driving down through Arden Street and seeing the Lambos and all the nice cars, and everyone should drive a nice car, and it does, and it's a good lesson for me and Pete as well, because me and Pete have been on our journey for we're coming up 10 years or something now as well, and you can get impatient along the way, and you drop the ball and you make mistakes and all of that. But what I got there was, and then you've turned it around, you've come back with money in the bank, and it's just resilience. It sounds like...
And you're always a chance.
And you're always a chance. So just to be in the game and just to keep turning up, eventually you get there, but no one said that you're not going to have to go, to hell and back multiple times to do it. It's a crazy story, Nick.
Well, it was hell and back. I mean, I've left a little bit out, which is personal. I can't put into this podcast, but there was a personal bit there where it was hell and back, but there was a division in the road where I had to make. And when I made that division, which way do I want to take in life? Do I want to go this way? I want to go that way. So I knew which way I wanted to head. So that was why, that's to me, it's so important to gain back this respectability from humility, so the humility bit was unbelievable,
So pride was playing a...
Well, it's not so much a pride, it's more about, like all the people that I owed money to and I paid back every dollar, they were still humiliating me. Now, I can tell you now, I could name them if I won't name them, but every one of them have either gone broke or they died.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And when they died, they were broke. So, they were snapping at my heels, but, and they were bagging me and humiliating me and everything else. And I've had the joy, and I'll say this publicly, I've had the joy of watching them fall over the line the wrong way, you know. So, you know, you can forgive, but you never forget.
That's a good one.
My dad says, "He who laughs last laughs longest." So
and laughs the loudest.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey Nick, can you tell us a little bit about standard car sales and prestige? So what you had a big part of your career in prestige. So I'm sure the margins were a bit more generous in prestige,
Bit
but
juicier.
it's the what about the difference in the conversations that you're having with people who are buying, you know, your Zephyr and your FB and your FJ versus the people that are buying some of these European cars? What's, you know, can you help our audience understand?
It's a great question. You know, it's something I learnt when I was in Sydney off John Thompson and John Phillips. At the time, they taught me how to speak to people and become their best friend. And I never forget a good friend of mine said to me one day, when you're talking to these people, talk to them like you're talking to your grandmother. And I've kept to that scenario. When I come back from Sydney, I would compliment people. I'd take interest in what they're about. So when I go back and think about the Zephyrs and that, I think, or the Holdens, I think, geez, I wish I'd have spoke to them a bit differently as well. But now I get enjoyment out of speaking to people, irrespective if they're buying, you know, a mattress off me. If I was selling it on Marketplace or something like that, I'd get just as much enjoyment out of talking to them because I want them to walk away and say, geez, he was a good bloke. He was a nice person. Because it's, and with buying prestige cars, most people, and you've got to understand this, a lot of people would spend 50 grand, a lot of people spend 500,000, but they all come from the same walks of life. And all they want is to be treated in the right mannerism. Don't judge people on what the amount of money is. I certainly don't. In fact, I think the ones that spend 500 are harder. I love the people who spend 50 to 80 grand or whatever the dollar value is, because they've made their commitment. They've worked all their life, and this is their first, probably biggest investment, or it's their second or third biggest investment. You know, we've come back 3 or 4 times, and because we've got so many repeat clients, that when they do come back, they come back as a family. They don't come back as, you know, as just another client, and that's hence our reason. Our Google reviews have always sat at 4.8. Our always buying sits at 5.
And that's tough as a car salesman too, right? Because people, you know, people by default are trying to find fault with people selling them cars.
Yeah, well,
That's amazing.
you know, I always say to my sons and everybody else in the business, if a client's not happy, give me his money back. Or what have you lost? You've lost nothing because the profit wasn't really there because the car wasn't the right car. So you haven't
Don't
spent...
try and hold on to something that you're not meant to.
Yeah, you haven't spent the profit, and the profit's not in the bank. You give them their money back, it's just back, put the car back on the floor. You know, I mean, it's quite an easy way to do it. But if you start arguing with people about, you know, cars and pricing and all that, they're not it's not the way you want to do it. I mean, we might have done it 40 years ago or 50 years ago, but not now because, you know, people are smart. Young people are very smart. Most of them have got degrees. And what's interesting is a lot of our clients are between 25 and 40. You know, they're married couples, young married couples. They got their own house. They're not.
PK's just crunching the numbers.
Yeah, so,
A bit of a realisation.
but look, they get their money through their businesses, and their kids are smart. People are smart today. You know, don't underestimate them. But I mean,
Talk about underestimating. You were saying before about, you know, talking. One of the keys to Bryce's thing was about talking to him, treating him like you were talking to your grandmother. My mum used to say all the time, you know, it costs you nothing to be nice, right? And it sounds like that's something that you've lived by and consciously gone out of your way to make effort. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, that is fair to say. And the whole staff's wired that way. It's not a show; it's sincerity.
Yeah,
you know?
so it's good people that want to,
I think Nick, just quickly, and correct me if I'm wrong, because sales, as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm thinking we're talking to one of the best salespeople in Melbourne. But the things that you're saying, is it less about trying to sell this car and more about, hey, I'm going to connect with you. I want to be someone you want to buy through.
And if this is the right fit.
Because ultimately, they can buy cars anywhere.
Exactly.
So you're selling a piece of metal that they could go and buy anywhere, I suppose. Like they come out of the factory and you're that intermediary between the manufacturer and then the ultimate sort of purchaser. You need to make yourself someone they want to deal with. Is that the magic? Forget selling the car.
100% correct, Pete.
Yeah.
And that's what people want to do. They want to feel comfortable. They want the honesty side of it. And I don't want to sound like a car salesman, because that's not what it's about. It's more about, we've got a product to sell. Like you said, they can go anywhere and buy the car. It's where they're going to be treated well. Yeah. They're going to be looked after. They're going to get, it's the best value they think is for their dollar, or we think it's for their dollar. They got their warranties in place, because predominantly we only sell cars under new car warranty, so it eliminates any issues. So if you got no issues, it's a happy family all the way through for everybody. Everybody walks away happy. But again, getting back to what I said earlier, and I say this to my staff, take an interest in what those people do. So my first point of view, I say, okay, my name's Nick, John, okay, and Mary, how are you? What do you guys do? Do you live locally? I know we live in so-and-so. Oh, yeah, great. And what, do you work? You still got your own business? I try and find out as much as I know about them, because I'm not doing that to make small chat. I'm doing that to find a common denominator. And I can tell you now, within 10 minutes, I'll find someone that knows somebody that knows them. And it happens every time, because there is where did you grow up? I always ask that question. I say Coburg. I grew up in Coburg. You know how many people I've asked that and they've said Brunswick or Preston or Coburg?
I feel like everyone grew up in Brunswick and Preston and Coburg.
Well,
from back in those
days.
Yeah, my parents the same.
But so you find that unity then, that's, and do you know what? It's great talking to them about it. Or the young couples are buying in Brunswick. Whereabouts? Oh, just off Lygon Street. So tell me the street, because I know Brunswick back to front. So I try and always, but that's an enjoyment I get out of it.
Yeah.
I don't do that because I want to do it. I have to do it. I do it because I enjoy doing it. I love listening to people and saying to me what their whole life story is about. Because if you don't take that interest, you might as well go and sell washing machines.
Yeah, you get that sense about you too, Nick. You do get that sense that you're genuinely heartfelt interested in what the people have to say, and then I think for a lot of people, they're not getting any conversations like that anywhere else in their life. So for you to just pause and reflect and have some time to talk to them about that, they'd really appreciate that. But there's so much to your story. I feel like that we haven't even touched the surface. But
there's a lot more.
If we sort of fast forward a little bit, that. To where you are, when we do drive past your showroom in Arden Street, it's impressive, right? But a little bit in the middle, when you started to enjoy the success and, you rebuilding your reputation and establishing your goodwill in the market, and you started to get profit, and you then moved from the need for the money to then all of a sudden you don't need the money anymore. What did you start to focus on and put your profits towards? Because I know you enjoy real estate and you obviously got a backstory in being involved in the community and the football clubs. But once money was no longer the driver because you had enough, where did you start to channel that energy?
Well, I channeled it right, thanks, Bryce, through maintaining the levels of our business acumen. That's what it's all about for me now. I mean, make sure that we don't change. We don't get greedy. We don't get selfish. We maintain our own levels. Our profits will look after themselves. That's not an issue. But the whole thing is,
look, I'm got a bit of OCD, and I mean, I go in, the toilets got to be clean. If they're not clean, I'll clean them. You know, the place has got to be spotless 24/7. So that's part of my whole persona of how I want to see my business. I don't want to see it dropping off. I want to see it spotlessly clean, because that's the first thing that people notice. That's first and foremost. The cars will sell, but they won't sell unless everything's spotless. But, you know, everything's got to be right. The salesman, if they want to have a coffee, they've got to have it in the coffee shop. They can't have them on their desks. There's all these little infrastructures I've got in the place that I keep saying, this is what's in place, and this is what we're not changing it for anybody in the place. You know, and this goes back to why 80% of my staff have been over there over 15 years.
Wow, that's impressive.
And that's alone is fantastic. I mean, and my two sons, and my daughter Ebony, Kane and Nicholas, they've done an amazing job. This is the other reason why the business has turned and what's helped me get there probably, you know, a bit quicker than I thought. So without those three, and my oldest boy was there for 20 years, which has his own dealership, but without the kids, I don't know, I probably would have given it away by now, because the stress would have got to me.
Gotcha.
But so they relieved me from a lot of stress, you know.
Can I ask Nick something about? So I love branding, and I've loved the journey of your brands across the different dealerships, and we end up at Nick Theodossi Prestige Cars, which is the institution that I guess we all know you from. Where can you remember the decision to run with a personal brand, being, you know, the Nick Theodossi brand? Do you remember that decision, and was that a conscious decision? Because, you know, looking back now, or I guess in hindsight, especially in this day and age, personal brands are so much more powerful than corporate brands. Like, it's just a fact. If you go and look at any big brand, and if you look at the founder's going to have more following than the brand itself. So yeah, is that? Yeah. Did you realise at the time that you were making such a good decision?
It's funny you say that, because I never put my name up there to about 94. I used to just work under a company name, which is trading as, but I never put my name up there because I didn't feel I had that credibility yet. So it took me a lot of years from, say, 81, 82, when I got back to Melbourne, to 94, and I thought, now I'm going to promote myself. So it was a lot of that going back in the brain, as far as, you know.
Was Kevin Dennis, was it, I heard you say, was it Kevin Dennis, or the Dennis, who was the one you were saying that was selling all the cars back in the day?
KD's, KD's, yeah.
So, because that was a personal brand as well?
Yeah.
So were you looking at those
Yeah,
guys?
I was looking at those, and I wanted to use my own name, but I didn't want to use it till I felt comfortable enough to use it, because, you know, there was a stigma within the trade about me at the time, going back in the 70s. And as I said to you earlier, they didn't forget in those days. They didn't forgive. So, you know, today it's...
Look at me now.
people go broke today and they start up tomorrow morning. So, so when I decided to brand, and I come back from Sydney, and everybody should own a prestige car at least once in a lifetime. Well, that was on the back of John Thompson's cards. Everybody should own a sports card once in a lifetime. So... And he'd never had a patent and all that.
Still like an artist.
So I trademarked it. So everybody should own a prestige car at least once in a lifetime. So we trademarked that. And it's funny, when so many people say to me, you know, Nick Theodossi, everybody should own and they say it to you. They actually repeat it to you.
Well, it nearly justifies the fact that you want it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I want one, but now Nick says it's okay. He says I should, so I've got to do it.
What about when the people say to you, I took on what you said and I bought a car. So where from? Say the bloke down the road. So well, it's not supposed to work that way.
Yeah. Can I ask, I've got a couple of questions. What's the most expensive car that you've sold? And as a car lover, I would imagine, what's your favourite car that you don't own, I would imagine,
Yeah.
and what's the favourite car that you do own?
Oh, probably the most expensive car we've sold. We've sold a few rollers at 700,000 and 800,000.
Well, you sold one to Walkley.
Walkley's got the Bentley. He's going into.
He's going all right.
He's going to a Rolls next. He doesn't know that yet. And the favourite car to drive is probably a Porsche. Porsche 992. But again, this might be my mentality. I'll drive home I'm driving a Bentley at the moment, so I might drive home in that, and I see a bloke drive the other way in a Porsche. I say, "Geez, a lucky bastard." and the reason I say it is because I forget what I'm in, and I drive them home. These guys that buy these cars, they get to use them,
to own them.
It's a different feeling, and I think to myself, how wonderful is that? He's driving that car. He's probably a lawyer or something like that, and he gets to drive it home and enjoy it. We're driving home and thinking, it's only a car, So I do. That's how I think. And I keep thinking, so why do I think like that for? But that's what it is.
What about, have you had any notable, I guess, celebrities or big people come into the store with deep pockets, Nick, that you've...
Well...
That you're at liberty to say.
Yeah, that you're
You would have helped the duck out from time to time. You would have crossed the road, mate, and gone, Nick.
No, he used to get a car supplied from BMW. But
yeah, of course.
No, we've sold plenty of AFL players' cars over the years, and that's the greatest thing about being involved in football. It wasn't there to sell cars. It was there because I love being involved with Collingwood.
Yeah, here we go. Go the Pies.
Yeah, so what I loved about... Can I get on to football for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right, okay. So what I loved about football was I used to go from giving orders to taking orders. And that was my job on a Saturday. Go and get this, do that, and getting abused if you didn't do it properly. You think, shit, here I am running the business, and I'm copping this on the weekends, but I loved it. I loved every bit of it. And the players... and the friendships and mateship I got out of it, which still lasts to today, lasts forever, is amazing, So it's that part was a fabulous journey,
Can you unpack some of for the people that don't know, because we've done the research, us guys, so we're aware of your involvement down at Collingwood and stuff. Can you talk us through some of those days at Danny Foley
sure.
and what you were doing?
Yeah, well...
maybe a couple of stories from the hallways.
Yeah, well, I started in 79 when Tommy was there, and Tommy was sacked in 82, midway. Mick Irwin took over. Then Mick was sacked, and then Jack Cale come in. He coached us from Port Adelaide. Then he left, and then Bobby Rose decided to take over and coach again. When Bobby was about 78 or something at the time, but he was a fabulous bloke. And so Bobby lasted 1.5 years, but Lee Matthews had just finished up at Hawthorn, put him on as assistant coach, and then Lee took over, and Lee was there for 10, 11 years. And then after Lee was Tony Shaw, then Mick Malthouse. So I was there from 79 to 2000. At Collingwood. So, and I started off as getting the drinks and the pies for the players, recovery session, so they could have a cold beer after the game.
And a pie.
And a smoke, You get Billy Picken or Peter Moore having a cigarette after the game. But that was their first job. Then I went into doing stats, and then I went into doing riding up. I was a runner for 3 or 4 years. I went from the running to in the box and stayed in the box right to 2000 to Mick come along, and then he threw me out on the bench, and because he had his own team of people, he brought it along. But I'll just tell you this story, and I told Walks about it at my 70th, but what had happened was if you know Collingwood, Victoria Park, the coach's box sits on top of the Heatley stand. So you had to go up this ladder, steel ladder, get onto the roof. They had a couple of chipboards, so you had to walk across the roof and into the coach's box. So I'm up there with Gubby Allen, Lee Matthews, Paul Cranage, which was the second coach at the time. And Gubby said, Lee wants some chips and coffee. So I said, okay. So I go down there, and so I go down. So I get me one and get that one. So I go down there, get 2 buckets of chips, 2 coffees, and I'm thinking, how am I going to get back up this ladder? Because the ladder was straight up. It was straight up, probably about 20 runs. Anyway, so I got my jacket. I got 2 buckets of chips in that. I got the coffees, and I'm climbing up the ladder, one hand on each rail, all the way through, making sure I don't spill the coffees, because they didn't have lids on them, right? So
And you had to do it in one trip by the sounds of it.
I did. I had to do it in one trip because it was nearly half time, right, to get back for the half time thing. And anyway, so I was team manager. So anyway, what happened? I get up the top. Anyway, I got coffee all over my hands where I spilled it, and I pulled the chips out and put them down. And Gubby Allen turned around and said, "Hey, Nick, Lee wants sauce on his." So I said, "Good."
Good luck.
So, yeah, but and worked with Spud Frawley. Spud was there for 3 years as a seconds coach and assistant to Tony Shaw in the seniors and Stan Magro. And Spud, you'd sit next to Spud because I had to do the writing up of the messages for quarter time and half time and 3/4 time. And every time someone did something wrong, Spud would turn around and he'd whack you in the chest, like with closed fist, and just go bang. And I'm telling you, every time, I fell off the chair every time. I mean, it was horrific. But the pain, it wasn't the falling off the chair, it was the pain in the chest. So in time, I said to him, "Spud, I'm going to sit up behind you from now on. I can't do that anymore. You're killing me." So anyway, but he was just a great bloke to work with, Spud. You know, he'd come out and he'd say to blokes like, "I'm under the pump, boys. Can't you see it? I'm under the pump. If you don't win, I'm going to get the sack." And he'd always come up with some one-liners or something like that. But, you know, and he was just an hilarious guy, but he was tough as nails, the toughest bloke I ever met. Spud and I spent a lot of time together when his mental health come into play, and I rang him one day. I said, "I heard you're not well, mate." He said, "I'll be okay, I'll be fine." I said, "Well, I want to share something with you. I've got mental health issues as well. I've been on this medication for blah, blah, blah," and we got yakking away. And as soon as I opened up to him, he embraced me. So we started doing meditation together for about a year or so down in Brighton, and we go down 3 mornings a week, and I'd meet him and we do all this meditation together, and it was, you know, and we'd check up on each other, you know, become a real close friendship, more so than when we was at Collingwood. So we check up on each other with a phone call. "How you going, mate? You going okay?" "Yeah, going great." I don't know what happened in the end. I believe he went off his medication. I got back, and I was overseas, and I got back and I saw him on the game. I think that's how shows they call it, the game.
Fox, yeah.
And he was yelling and screaming, and I said to Carol, my wife, I said, "He doesn't look well." So I rang him. I rang him on the Monday. I said, "You okay?" He said, "I'm fine. Brand new, you know, like brand new. Fine, you know." But and then 3 days later, he knocked himself off. And I see his brother, Charge Frawley. He lives up in Noosa, so I keep in contact with Charge all the time. He's a terrific bloke as well. But the Frawleys are a dynasty, and they're just an amazing group of people. And, you know.
Can I ask, Nick, what would you say the lesson is there for the people listening at home with Danny? Because, like, Danny's obviously, he was larger than life and a legend of, you know, of Australian sport and footy. And you're saying sort of it's hard to fathom that, you know, you noticed something, you saw him through the TV, and then you give him a call as a mate on the Monday, but for whatever reason, Danny he wasn't able to tell you that he was struggling. Yeah, I just wonder what else you can do and what the lesson is, you know, that for people that are struggling out there to, you know, to maybe talk up and.
Yeah, look, you've got to, if you've got it, I mean, and I manage mine pretty well. I'm still now 13, 14 years into medication every day. when you fall in that hole, might take you 3 or 4 days, might take you a week and a half to get out of it. The thing is, your health and your fitness probably plays a big part in it, keeping yourself training in it. But identifying it, I've identified 3 other mates that have got it. And I won't say their names because they're in the TV net. And identify and say, mate, you got problems. And I've rang other friends to say, look, we need to help so-and-so. He's got issues. And no, he's fine. A week later, they ring me and say, how'd you pick it? But you do. You can sense it.
It's the
That
pattern.
whole generation as well. You blokes are all too tough for your own good as well, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yeah. I mean, you don't want to be called a weak bastard. But, but as I said, you're hard on the outside and is soft on the inside.
But the takeaway I just got from what you described with Danny there was that as soon as you opened up, he opened up and it created a bond. And I feel like
Yep.
that's the lesson for everyone here, irrespective of your era. Was harder to talk about that stuff as opposed to now. But just you too, me as well. That is the number one antidote for a lot of people because a problem shared is a problem halved.
For sure. And I'll tell you another story just quickly is Paul Roos had a men's health night down at Albert Park. There's no alcohol, all men, probably 200, 300 men. Anyway, I got to build up the courage. I got up and I said, well, I suffer mental health. Now I sit next to blokes I don't ever know, right? And I told them my story, right? By the time I sat down, I had 3 blokes come up to me within a metre of me and say, that was unbelievable, mate, but I got the same problem. What do I do? This was in a night 3, 4, 5 years ago at Albert Park. So there's plenty of blokes out there that suffer it, and you got to identify it, and then you got to try and work on it. But I would suggest anybody that's feeling bad or talk to somebody. Talk to somebody.
Can I ask you, you said you started medication about 13 years ago. What was your relationship with, or I guess, what was your thoughts when you sat down and you found out, or you've been diagnosed, and then there was options for medication? Were you no problem, happy to jump on medication straight away, or were you a bit reserved and sort of like, what is this stuff and what does it do? Because I guess for me, I'd be going, oh my God, once you're on, 13 years is a long time. So what's your relationship with that kind of?
Well, I'll tell you what my relationship was, is my doctor, Harry Unglick, which used to be the club doctor at North, and he's been my doctor for years. Anyway, he said, mate, you're suffering mental depression, Anyway, mental health issues. And I said, I want you to go on this tablet. Well, I went on it for about a week, and I was at the farm up in Mansfield, and I thought, bloody weak bastard, I don't need these tablets.
Yeah.
I'm not taking them anymore. So I didn't tell Harry. Anyway, we were going overseas the next week, and I was in Lucerne or something like that, and I was shocking, like I really was. I was, having thoughts and having bad thoughts. So I rang him from overseas. I said, Harry, I stopped taking, I didn't tell you. He said, mate, you've got to get back on them, and I promise you in 9 weeks you'll be fine. And he's right. So it's a chemical imbalance of the brain. Now, I don't know if that's due to all the stress I went through in my life, the disappointments of trying to prove myself. And I mean, you spend a lot of time in your life trying to prove, in the early days, all I do is I wanted to prove myself, so, and I don't know if it derives from that or what it derives from, but anyway, I was faced with it, and I listened to my doctor, and I got back on it, and I had another mate played at Collingwood. He now lives in Western Australia. I went over there, caught up with him for dinner, and they said, can you have a chat to so-and-so? I said, yep. Had a chat to him. I said, what are you taking? He said, nothing. I said, right, I'm on this. Go and see your doctor. You've got to get on this. Because he didn't want to take his medication. He was like me. He thought only weak bastards take medication.
That's why I asked, because I sort of don't let myself off the hook either.
No, only weak bastards take medication. We're stronger than that. We're men, but it doesn't work that way.
I'm all right. I'll be fine.
I'm okay, But yeah, so anyway, look, he's fantastic now. So he did listen to me. So you take something out of it. You think, at least I've helped some people. I wish I could have helped Spud, I mean, but he was on another journey,
Yeah, amazing, Nick. Nick, this is an amazing story, and I know I'm conscious of time because I know you've got another appointment after this one, but we could genuinely do another podcast.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I love to finish I like to get out as 1980.
That's right. Well, I've definitely got a question that I want to ask you, and that's
sure.
and that's around because we all love property, right? So you've started with the parents who wanted to pay down the property. You wanted to go down the entrepreneur path, which you've done and successfully done, and it's been an incredible sort of ride over the last hour or so. But do you park money in real estate now? Do you into resi or commercial? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Look, I buy a lot of commercial property. When I say I buy a lot, I buy and sell. I'll speculate to sell, to accumulate. Then the blue chip stuff I keep, I hold on to. I'm always amortising my debt every month.
You're always what? What was that?
Amortising debt.
Making it go down. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So I'm using the equity that I get out of the rentals to pay off.
Gotcha.
Right. So, and this is what happened back in '89 when the recession was on. Banks come back and revalued your property, and if you didn't have 50% equity in it, they just say you're up. So I learned from that what the idea was to knock the debt out as quick as possible, get under 50% what you paid for it, not what it's worth. Forget about what it's worth today.
Yeah.
That means nothing.
It's cheating.
Only what you paid. Yeah,
What you paid for it.
Book
So
value.
If you paid 20 million and you owe the bank 10 and the property's worth 60, don't worry about the 60. Worry about
So if you paid 20 million, Benny, you want to be down at 10 up.
or thousands or whatever. There's ways that's how I operate. That's not to say that some people use all their equity and go all the way. I'm a bit more conservative. I like to get the equity. So if we do have a recession and a rainy day,
You've seen a few bad days.
Yeah. So we don't want to be going there. Not at my age anyway, certainly. But my children are all wired the same way because from my father to my mother to me, and my kids are the same way.
Can I just ask a car question, Peter? Because I know we've got to bounce. But roughly, how many? I've got a couple of car questions.
Yeah, sure.
So how many cars are we roughly moving? And where do you get the bloody cars from?
Well, we sell a couple of hundred a month, every month.
Damn.
And
Prestige, all
prestige, yeah. And we sell, we buy cars all around Australia because, and I'll just give you a brief how it works.
Yeah.
So if a Jaguar dealer in Brisbane is trading a Porsche, he won't ring the Porsche dealer in Brisbane, he'll ring me for a price. Because the Porsche dealer in Brisbane will know whose car it is, and he might contact the client and they lose the client. So it's a bit of a cat and a mouse, but they'll ring us and say, Nick, what would you pay for this car? I'll pay you that much money. I say, okay, so they'll do the deal on that price. And when the deal's done, I get the trade-in. So I buy the trade-in off that dealer. So you multiply that by 500, 600 dealers around Australia, new car dealers that sell prestige cars, including Tasmania.
Is there that many Prestige?
Oh, there would be. I mean, when you're talking about Land Rover, you're talking about Mercedes, and mainly new car dealerships, all around Australia, and then you got 30 different brands,
So is Nick, I'm hearing that this deal's wrapped up before the first part of the deal happens. So that dealer will on-sell that, contract. Okay, we'll do a deal. And it doesn't sit in their car yard. They're not advertising it. It's just the car will bypass their showroom and go straight to you.
Straight to us, yeah.
And they get their click.
They'll invoice us. We pay them straight away, put on a truck.
Hustling. How good is
That
that?
makes sense.
So is it a volume game for you, or is there still healthy margins on each unit?
It's not a volume game, no. And as far as margins go, and I always say if there's a profit, take it. I'm not sitting back there and wanting X amount out of it. If you do that, you'll never sell a car. So if a car's been in stock for one day and you can get a profit, or 1 month, you get a profit, sell it. If it's been there for 6 months, you might lose money on it, and you've got to accept that. And that happens quite often too. Don't think it doesn't. But that's...
Where does that go wrong?
Well, that goes wrong because the market's moved.
Okay.
So from COVID to now, it's moved probably about 30 to 40%, come down.
Down, yeah, because it flew up. Right?
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So you've got to make sure that, and it's like supply and demand. If there's 30 Corvettes, 23 model Corvettes for sale on the net, they're going to push the price down. If there's 2, the prices go back up. So you're consistently monitoring that. I do that on a daily basis.
I
still do a bit of that, and then I do that, and then the boys will do it. We all do it together, and we'll say, right, we need to reduce that, or we need to put that up. In fact, sometimes we put prices up, and we've sold them quicker. So sometimes it's not the price; it's more, Look, everything's done on the internet these days. It's not done by.
Are they coming? Are you still getting them into the showroom?
We still do a 50% walk-in, which I love walk-ins because that's where
you're
you
going to buy a prestige car, man. You've got to go down.
I want to go down. I want to get a coffee. I want to sit with Nick.
Joe a Prosecco. You know what I mean?
Nick needs to know where they grew up. And all their family.
Got to find out all about it.
Yeah, I go Bandura. Oh, I was impressed.
I have to write a book.
So, is there a sweet spot for age?
In the age of the cars or
yeah. So you don't want to buy them.
We don't buy any. We don't buy anything older than 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, gotcha.
Oh, really?
So anything from 6 months or from new to 3 years old, as long as it's under new car warranty. So we're now currently buying 21 onwards.
Yep.
So 20s are not really what we want to hear. And I did this back in 17 or 18 or 16. I can't remember. I said to the boys, we can't have anything in 2020. We can't have anything. It doesn't start for 20 because it sounds old.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like a psychological barrier there. Yeah.
If I said to you, I've got an 18 model Porsche and it's 2024, you're going to say, mate, that car's 6 years old.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. Yeah. So you got to keep working on that as well. That's
it's fluid.
Oh well, like come to 2029, we'll be saying, hey, listen, we can't even pass 30. Everything's got to start with 3 now, So, by the way, I'll be 83.
and do prestige buyers buy largely cash or largely with some finance?
50-50. Yeah.
Cash.
Cash.
A few suitcases, no questions.
No, not a lot of cash these days. You don't see a lot of cards, credit cards, and and they're happy to pay them.
What's hot at the moment? What would you say is what's the cool cat off?
What's the brand?
I'm going to have a guess. Let's have a guess. I'm going to say McLaren. What are you saying, Peter?
I don't know. Mercedes.
Aston Martin DBS is my. I don't care.
No,
about
actually,
cars.
you're right. The McLarens sell.
The McLarens, am I good?
They're flying.
Yeah.
They're good.
But Adrian Portelli's lifting them onto a 30-store
it,
building. Probably doesn't hurt, but
he's probably.
And the Bugattis. Is there any of them moving?
No, I've never had a Bugatti. No.
Andrew Tate. Nick, mate, this has been amazing, and I think congratulations to you for the career you've carved out and the places you've been. I guess the depths you've been, and then sort of working really hard to, like you said, you had 2 paths to take, and you probably took the right one, and it took a lot of hard work and that sort of stuff. And we know you do a lot with charity and all that sort of stuff. So you're a very generous man as well. So
don't let that old guy in, man, because you're killing it. I reckon you got 15, 20 on it. So you're doing all right.
They've let the old man in.
Yeah. No, well done, mate, and appreciate your time.
Thanks, buddy.
Good on you, Nick.
Well done.
Please, guys, like, share, subscribe. That was a ripper. I'm just conscious the Bentley is sitting in Bunnings.
No, I parked behind the Bentley.
Is the Bentley out the back?
Oh, no, is that your Bentley that was in the alley? Or
no, that'd be Walkley's Bentley. His Bentley's in Bunnings, mate. So he needs to get down there before there's a ding in it. Please, guys, support our amazing charity, EB, Epidermolysis Bullosis. And see you at the top.
You!
People want to be part of a winning team. People can find a better version of themselves if they choose.
You just need to go start some shit.
Action is all that matters.
Be a man of your word.
I think I look back now and I'm like, whoa, that took some guts.
Be kind, be kind, be kind.
See you at the top. New episode every Wednesday.